Hey, what's up guys? So today we're going to look at the Steve Reeves Your Physique from April 1948. So of course Steve won the Mr. America in 1947, an awesome cover photograph by Joe Weider's Your Physique. So let's look at the table of contents here, and I'm going to go through this magazine in a future video, but today I just wanted to cover one particular exercise. So let me bring this in. Here's the editorial. Here's the editorial. Joseph E. Weider, editor-in-chief. Great picture of Steve over here. Some of the people involved with this magazine at that time were, of course, Joe Weider, George Jowett. Now, what I know about George Jowett is that he was a mentor to Joe, and not to get too much off topic, but that's another fascinating story. I know that George Jowett was a mentor to Joe Weider. Dr. Frederick Tilney, Earl Lederman, who is an awesome author. The exercise I want to look at today by Steve Reeves is on page 16, and it's called, the article's called Bigger and Better Arms. So let's look at that real quick. I'm going to move over here. So on the wall that I own, the section from Steve Reeves' garage in Oakland, California that George Helmer excavated, and that's an awesome story. If you don't know that story, you can read about it in a couple of different Flex magazines. I think there were actually 2 magazines that they covered that story, and they call it the Holy Grail of Bodybuilding. George Helmer was a good friend of Steve Reeves. And once again, not to get off topic too much, but George found out where Steve's childhood home was, and he got permission to excavate in the garage. The walls were made of wood, and George was able to cut out that section of Steve's first workout. And so one of the exercises is called bench curl. And you know, we call things by different names now. You have bench press, you have barbell curl, easy bar curl, you have lying triceps extensions. The exercise I want to look at today, and I want to get this from Steve's article, is called a one-arm tricep bench curl. So I'm finding, as I do more research, they use that word quite a bit, a bench curl. What would you think that is? Would you think that that's sitting on a bench and, you know, curling the weight, whether it's a barbell across your thighs or a dumbbell in each hand, just sitting upright, curling the weight? Would that be a bench curl? Would it be an overhead extension for triceps? Would they call that a bench curl? Well, in this case, they're calling a one-arm tricep extension, lateral extension, for the lateral head of the triceps, a bench curl. So let's look at that. Let me come in and show you the picture. So there you go. There is Steve performing the one-arm tricep bench curl. So the lateral head of the tricep, let me grab the camera real quick, is an awesome muscle to develop. And over here on my wall, I just happen to have a good example of that. See that right there? That is the lateral head of the tricep. Alright, so there we go. I'm going to go ahead and read the exercise here from the magazine, and then I'm going to perform it the way that I understand it. Alright? And I thought this was interesting. In the first part of the article, Steve talks about when he was younger, how he read all the different magazines and studied all the greats like Earl Lederman and Joseph Weider, and on and on and on. Of course, John Grimmick was an influence for Steve Reeves. And then he finds himself in New York, and right here, since I'm in New York, I've had the pleasure of meeting many young bodybuilders personally, and he talks about how you can make progress, you know, in your own garage gym, but he says it's best to work out with at least one partner to have that competitive spirit amongst each other. And then here he talks about meeting Sig Klein, the famous athlete and bodybuilder from New York. Sig invited him to appear at a show that he was giving in New York. And so there you go, guys. You know, when you go out and accomplish something in life, opportunities happen. And that's, you know, something that I'm a really big fan of, is working hard. It doesn't matter what age you are, whether you're a teenager or a 50-year-old, 60, 70-year-old. If you work hard, opportunities will present themselves, you know, as a reward more times than not. So he meets Joe Weider, who's the editor of Muscle Power and Your Physique magazines, and Joe asked about teaming up on a series of articles on the methods I use in building up my body and what it was that made it possible for me to win the title of Mr. America. I liked the idea, but not being a writer, I was a bit hesitant. And another thing, I've never put my methods on paper other than a wall. He had never written down his workouts, I guess. So I thought it over, and I thought it might be a good idea. I decided to do 12 articles, the first being Bigger and Better Arms. So this is the very first article, to my knowledge, at least that he did with Joe Weider. So that's kind of cool in and of itself. And then he talks about how the arms are one of the best body parts to really focus on, because he says when you're walking you know, amongst people and people say, "Did you see the muscles on that fellow?" They usually are referring to the biceps. In most feats of strength, such as hand wrestling, of course we call that arm wrestling now, biceps certainly are the muscles which come into play. So he talks about the Zotman curl. And then he goes through all the exercises. But what I want to focus on here, since I've been thinking about the wall and a bench curl, and I've been doing research on what he might have meant by that. A one-arm tricep bench curl. So let's look at that. A good exercise for building the outer head is the one-arm tricep bench curl. This is the way I do it. Lie supinely on a bench. We don't use that word much anymore. We just say lie on a bench, face up. Using a moderately light dumbbell, and that's going to be the key here. Extend the arm with the palm front. Bend the arm at the elbow, lowering it across the body until it touches the pec muscle on the opposite side. Raise to arm's length, being careful not to change the position of the elbow. Change to the other hand and repeat. So he's working one side for a set, and then he's working the other side for a set. He talks about doing 8 to 12 reps. And once you can do 12 reps, he says, raise the weight by 5 pounds. All right, so lie on your back, face up, palms front, facing that way. Take the dumbbell, elbow stays stationary, touch the pec, and then raise it back up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, a few things that I noticed. First of all, where do you hold the dumbbell? Are you holding it over here or over here? Well, my natural way to hold this is with my pinky up against the inside of the dumbbell. If I hold it over here, I feel like the weight is a little off balance. If I hold it over here, I feel it more. So that's number one, is I'm going to hold my dumbbell pinky next to that. Secondly, if your chest has already got some development, you're going to hit your chest before the range of motion is complete. So you might want to bring it out even further across your chest, towards your right shoulder in this case, to get a fuller range of motion. And then lastly, if you're not feeling that, you might want to flex the tricep just for a count. Okay, so I was just doing some reps there, and definitely bringing it further across, keeping my elbow stationary is going to be the key for me. If I try to bring it right above my pec here, like so, I'm not going to get a full range of motion. You can see there's not really 90-degree angle here. I want to bring it all the way across and really look as I'm doing this and see if I get that nice squared off 90-degree angle. So I'm looking for that. If I get that, that makes a big difference for me. Yeah, I can feel that. And then just giving a little bit of a flex right there, maybe on those last few reps. And I'm not trying to change Steve's exercise, I would never do that, but everybody's different. So you're gonna have to experiment, and you may have to use a different weight, maybe a heavier weight. This is a 15, or maybe a 10-pound weight. And but it's definitely a good exercise worth exploring. So there you go. 3 sets of that, 8 to 12 reps. Once you can do that exercise for 12 reps easily, then you want to raise your weight by 5 pounds or what have you, and start over again. Do 8 reps and then work your way up to 12 again, and then keep raising the weight. You know, one thing I want to mention today is that I had just come out here to start working out. I had a conversation with a buddy, a friend, a new friend on Instagram. And it was really interesting about Steve Reeves. His screen name on Instagram is Orion26, and I hope he doesn't mind me reading this to you guys. But you know, we're all Steve Reeves fans, and since Steve is not around anymore, the more information we can share, we can learn more and really get a better idea, a full picture of who Steve Reeves was and what made him so great. So Orion26, my father was a sculptor. He said after looking at a picture of Steve and Hercules that all of the greatest masters of art like Michelangelo, Da Vinci, etc., if Steve Reeves lived in their time, there would be timeless, great works of art, paintings, charcoal, and great statues of him for the entire world to admire. Plus he loved and raised horses as we do. So Steve loved horses, of course, Morgan horses. He was very involved. And Orion26 on Instagram, also his family raises horses. So I said back, that's incredible. And one of Steve's books, I think it was One of a Kind by Milton T. Moore, the author states something very similar. He said that sculptors and painters back during that Renaissance period would have worn their fingers to the bone, creating art based upon Steve's physique. What kind of horses do you raise? Thanks for sharing. To which he says, old style Lippet Morgans, Spanish Mustangs. I've had different breeds, but the Baroque horse has always intrigued me. Are any of his horses of offspring still around? Well, that is a great question. I know Steve had uncles in Montana who were ranchers, and you know, you probably have to do some research, but it's very possible that you could find, you know, with some research, a horse that is an offspring of one of Steve's personal horses. And by the way, I have a couple of Steve's personal saddles. I haven't shared that with you yet. I haven't shown you the pictures of those yet, but I will. And since I'm talking to Orion26 here, and we're talking about horses, let it be a good time to mention it. Well, there you go, guys. Hey, find me on Instagram, Steve Reeves Hercules, at Steve Reeves Hercules. And I'll share your stories with our YouTube audience here. And if you guys have things to share, pictures, stories, whatever, share them, man. That's what we're trying to do, is get excited about natural, old school, classic physique, right? Especially as we get older, our health, you know, becomes so much more valuable. When we're younger, we think we can get away with stuff. And then you wake up, 20 years have gone by, and the wrinkles start to come in, and the aches and pains start to come in. I'm very lucky. I got wrinkles, but I don't have any aches and pains. A couple of little pops here and there, you know, when I'm warming up with exercises, but I don't have any pain. So I want to keep it at that, because the more I read about, longevity, and Steve was one of them, other than that shoulder injury that he got in making the movie. As far as I know, he had no injuries in the gym because he never went really heavy. He always said he was as strong as he wanted to be. So higher reps, less weight. Albert Beckles is a real good example of that. If you follow Arnold and Sylvester Stallone, for the most part, you see those guys doing lighter weights, higher reps, and they still look good. So once you have a certain amount of size, whatever that is, whatever you're happy with, then, start backing off the weight maybe a little bit, if you can, and go higher reps and go lighter weights. You can still do heavy, here and there, but maybe cycle all that stuff a little bit more, and that's going to be the secret to longevity. You'll keep your body, in great shape, in great health. Avoid having to someday, God forbid, use crutches or a wheelchair. I remember reading about George Hackenschmidt and how even when he was in his 70s, the guy was still an amazing athlete. He could jump over a chair back and forth, a high back chair, a lot. I can't remember how many times, I'm not even trying to guess. And he could still bench press, and he could still run a mile. So I believe it was George Hackenschmidt that said, all around strength. Strength is all around strength, meaning all the different components, not just heavy bench presses and deadlifts and squats, but sprinting, pull-ups, body weight stuff, really delving into these types of exercises that we talked about today. Break outside of the box that you're in right now, and I'm talking to myself as well, and experiment with some of these other things, and just see how that goes for you. All right, guys. Well, this has been a pleasure going over this stuff today. I appreciate you guys and all the comments I'm getting below these videos. I always got to give a shout out to my buddy Flint, because he's been so encouraging to me to keep doing this type of stuff. And my buddy Mark and Barry and Pat, these are just some names of people that I've met, since I became the custodian of all the Steve Reeves memorabilia that I have. So what's up to you guys? I appreciate our newfound friendship. Hope to talk to you soon. You guys have a great day, and I will see you next time.